Hi everyone, welcome you all. So in our previous video, we have started developing country service by using SpringBoot as MySQL is a database, right? So let us recap what I have done so far. So as part of the implementation, we have a database table called country, and then we have added a JPA dependency along with the MySQL connector dependencies in the pom.xml. And then we have added MySQL server properties in the application.properties file. So Spring Boot will use these properties to connect to the database. And then we have created a bean or entity class, which is exactly reflecting the table in the database. So whatever the table name we have provided, with the same name, we have created the bean class. With the same column names, we have created the variables in the bean class, which is basically entity class. And each and every variable we map to the column in the table. And then we have created a repository interface, so which is extended from the JPA interface from the JPA repository interface from the Spring Boot. So which is actually the main thing by which we can communicate with the database without writing any queries. So then we have created a service class. So till here we have done. So the next step is we have to write a controller class. So this is a main class. All the HTTP request will trigger this particular class. So all the mapping methods will be triggered, and these mapping methods will talk to the country service. Now in the country controller, we have to write all the mapping methods. Now let's go to our project. And if I just look at here, we already done country controller class earlier. So while working with the hash map, so let me open it. So this is a country controller class. All right. So now we need to modify this class. So let's remove all the implementation. And now we need to write a new implementation of these methods. So these are methods I already have. So we need to auto-write the country service because this particular control class will always talk to the service. So we need to again add this dependency injection to the country controller class. So this should be auto-write. All right. And then so this is a first get mapping method, so which will return all the countries from the database, and this method will return the country data based on the ID we passed, and this method will return the country data based on the name we have passed, and this method post mapping method will add a new country in the database, and put mapping, this method will update the existing record or existing country in the database, and finally delete mapping, this method will delete the entry from the database. So for each and every type of request, we have created multiple mapping methods. So now we'll see the one by one implementation. So the first method is get countries. It's very simple. So because we already created a service class, so let me open the country service. So we have to just call the country service method. So we have to just invoke the country service method from the controller class. Now, so get mapping. So whenever you get this endpoint, get countries, so this method will invoke the get all countries method. So how we can access this method? Through country service. So for the country service, we already created a variable auto void. So take that variable dot get all countries. That's it, single statement. So this statement will call call the method from the service, and which will return this particular statement will find all the data in the table and return it. So what is the return type here? List of country. So here also this method will return the list of country. List is an object which list is a variable which contains a multiple objects, and each object is a country type. So that we have to specify. I say country type of objects. And now we need to import this country. Okay, that's it. So this is a method we have implemented. So what is get countries add return statement? Okay, just look at here, get all countries, and which is basically return list of country. Get countries, perfectly fine. Let me save that. Forgot to specify the return statement. Okay, so this statement will return the country objects. Very simple now, because service method is already done all the stuff. So we need to just call the methods. So get countries is done. So now the next mapping method. Okay, so the next mapping method, so get countries ID. So when I pass get countries slash ID, ID here is a path parameter. So we have to specify the path variable value equal to id enter id. So this is also same. Now the implementation part. So get country by id. So we already created this method, right? So we need to invoke this method. So from the country service dot get country id. So whatever id we are getting here from the http request, we have to pass this id. Okay. So this statement will return the again country object. So this will return the country object. So this is straightforward, single statement. So sometimes if suppose ID is not available in the database, so there are chances to get an exception, right? So for that, what you have to do is we need to just add one try catch block here. So instead of returning the only country object, if it is found, no problem. If the country, if this ID is not available in the table, so it should throw some exception, right? So we need to handle that. So let's keep this in the try block return statement. So and catch block should handle it. So what I will do is before returning this, instead of returning this only country, suppose if it is find the ID, no problem. Okay, so I'm storing this instead of returning, I'm storing in the country variable, country. Okay, if the ID is available, which will store in the country object and then return that country here. I'll say return. And when you return the object, suppose not only the object, if you want to return something like HTTP response, there are multiple things in the response, right? Like we have a status code. Okay, we have a okay, or so we have a something called type, like data type, right? Headers. So all these things we can return along with the response. So for that, what you can do is we have to use some special class called response entity. So which is contains all the headers, cookies and everything. So I'm just creating one new response entity. Okay, response entity. So response entity, and here this will, I'm passing country objects, a country type. And here I'll say two things. One is I'm passing the country object. I should return something, right? So if the ID is found, I should return the whole country object with this ID if it is matches. So what I'm doing in this step, I'm getting the whole object into this variable based on this ID. Now along with the object, I'm also returning the status code. Okay, so country object, along with that I'm going to return some HTTP response. For that I can say HTTP status dot, and let me import this response entity, and then here you can see something country, this is country type. Just a moment. Okay, close this, and here country is my variable, comma HTTP status dot. So now you can see these are the different statuses we will get. So if the response is successful, so we can simply say okay. Okay, simply say okay. So what this statement exactly will do is, suppose I am fetching the country data by using ID. So by passing the ID to the service class. So if the ID is available, which will return the country object. So now what I'm returning along with the country object, return the status also, HTTP status also. That is the meaning of this statement. So now what could be the return type? The return type will be different. So the return type will be response entry of country. So this is a return type. Suppose the ID is not available and this statement will throw some exception. Then in the catch block, simply say exception, and there are specific exceptions also there, like element exception, something like that. So instead of doing that, you can just specify exception class, which will match him with all kinds of exceptions. And if it is an exception, if there is any mismatch or if there is no ID found, then simply what I will do is I will return nothing, and HTTP country is also not there. I'm just returning the not found message. I say HTTP status is not found. Status is not found. That's it. So this is the implementation of get country by ID. So when I pass this ID, which will pass the ID to the service class method, return the country object if it is available, and send the message along with the country object, sending the status message. If the ID is not available, this statement will throw some exception, and this statement will throw the will handle that exception. It will just send the HTTP status is not found. Okay, so this is a implementation of get country by ID. So now let us move on to the next one. So get country by name. So this is also exactly the same as this one. So let me just copy this, and slightly we need to change here. So get countries country name. So this is a endpoint. So we are getting the name as part of HTTP request. We are receiving that into the country name. So here what we have to do is, previously we got the get control country by ID. We have passed ID. So this time we have to call get country by name. So country service dot, there is a method got get country by ID, sorry, get country by name dot get country by name. So here we have to pass the country name which we are getting from the HTTP request. Okay, so now this statement, we are calling the service class again. So if I just look at here, get a country name, I'm just passing the country name here. So this method will return the country here. So I'm just creating one variable. Again, if the country name is not available in the database, then what I have to do? So again, this will throw some exception. So return the new response entity, country type object, and this is a country variable. Now what is the HTTP status? HTTP status is also okay. Now here the return type is not a country. The return type is this one, response entity country is a return type. So if it is successfully working fine, then it will return the country object along with the successful message. But if the name is not found in the table, then this exception will occur. So here it will clearly say not found. So this is a implementation of get country by name. Now let's go to the add country. So it is again straightforward, very simple. Add country means we will get the country object, country details through HTTP request. And then what I have to do is we have to just call the add country method from the service. I can just go back here, add country, just pass the country which will return the country. So simple method we have to call. All right, so here country service dot add country. So we have to pass the country here. So that will return the country. So already there. So now put country. So this is update country. So in the update request, what I will do is in the update country, I will pass the ID. So which ID I want to update, and also data. So this is actually data ID. I'm not passing from the code. So from the request body, I just pass the ID as a path parameter, and country name, country capital as a request body. Okay, so by taking these two, so for the fourth record, it should update country name capital as this one. So finally, I need to get the response like this. Okay, so here one is path parameter, one is request body. So both we have to capture. Now go back and now update country. So in the update country, there are two parameters. One is path parameter, one is the request body. So for the request body, the entry is already there. So request body, country, I'm getting the request body. But what about the path parameter? That we have to specify. So how to specify the path variable? So at the rate path variable and value equal to ID. Sorry, at the rate path variable. So path variable and what is the variable here? Value, right? So value equal to ID. So update country along with the URL, I'm passing the ID. So ID is a value, and whatever value I'm passing as part of the ID, we have to store in some variable. So let's create one variable called int ID. Okay, now if I just look at this, so this will receive the path parameter, which record we want to update, and this parameter will receive the request body. Okay, and so once you get this, so inside this, what you have to do is, so we have to first check this, check any entries available in the database with this ID. So first we have to verify it out, right? So for that, what I will do is take the country service again. From the country service, what I will do is I will get the country data by passing the ID, whatever I'm getting here. So country service dot get country by ID. So then I'll pass this ID here. So what this statement will do, this particular statement will return the country object if it is available by using this ID, which will fetch get country by ID. When I pass this ID, the country search. So country service, we already have that method. If I just go back to the country service, so we can just see get country by ID, right? If the ID is available, which will return that ID, right? So I'm using that method. So if it is returning the ID, right, I am just calling as a exist country. Okay, exist country. I'm calling it as a exist country, and this is also country object. So country object. All right. So now when I get the country in this variable, that means what? That country is available in the database. And once you get this country, okay, so with this ID, I'm getting all the data which is already available in the database. Now I need to update this. How to update this? Again, we have to use a JPA method. Exist country dot set country name. So this is from Pojo class. Okay, set country name. So what? How to set the country name here? The country object. So we are also sending the request body, right? Along with the request. From the request body, we have to take the country name and the country capital. So take the country object dot get country name. So now what we are doing here, by taking this ID, we are extracted the country record from the table, existing record. So once you get the record from the table, we are setting the country name for that particular record. And the same thing we have to do for the capital. So exist country dot, instead of set country name, I'll call set country capital, and country dot, instead of get country name, we call get, it is not get country name. Yeah. So get country name, and here get capital, country capital. Okay, so we are getting the data from this object, then we are setting the data into the database object. So both we are doing here. So once we have done this exist record, then finally we have to update. So far we have not updated, just we captured the record which is already available. For that record, we have set this data, then we have to update. For update, what we have to do? From the service class, we have to call the method. So go to the service, country service. Okay. So from the country service, we have already created one method here, update country. So we have to call this method by passing the country object. So here we have to call it. How to call it again? Country service dot update country. And here we have to pass exist country. You have to pass exist country because we already captured the existing country. We set the data. Now we are updating. So when I pass existed country, country object will receive here and it will save it and return the whole country object. Okay, return the whole country object. So that is done by the service class. All right, so with this we have updated. But suppose if there is any conflict, by some reason it is not successfully updated, so then we will get some conflict from the database, right? So then how we can handle this? So put whole thing in the try block from here. Okay, so try block and country, existing country, and till here, whole thing. Okay, and here what we have to do is, let me just, so we are updating this perfectly fine. So after updating, what happening, this update country also will return the country object. Okay, so what is a country object? This is updated country object. Okay, after updating, this will return the again country object. So that we have to receive in a variable, and we are sending the successful message along with this object. Okay, so I'll name it as updated country because that variable is already available. So I say updated country. So now I'll return this updated country along with the status message. So the return type is same. So again like this. So previously we already done this same thing. We will return here. So return new response entity country, and here updated country we have to send, and HTTP status is okay, perfectly fine. And it is all everything I put in the try block. And suppose somehow something is not working, or something is there is a conflict in the database, or record is not properly updated, so then this catch block will automatically handle it. I'll say exception E, and here, instead of returning this whole object along with the OK message, here we are returning nothing, and not updated country. We are just sending HTTP status is not okay. And instead, I'll say conflict. Okay, this is the status message. Now save it. So here return type also we have to change, because these two will return response entity. So we have to change the return type. So with this, we have successfully done the update country. All right. So then finally we have a delete country. So this is again very simple. So we are passing the ID. So according to this ID, we have to delete it. So for that, what you have to do is we have to capture the path variable, and we have to call the service class again. So country service, take the country service dot. We have a method called delete country. So we have to pass this ID directly to the delete country to the service class. So after deletion, what this will return? So if I go to the service class, go to the country service. Okay. So if I go to the country service here, after deleting the country, oh, this statement will delete the country. And after deletion, we have to send a response, right? This will also set message and ID, and finally returning the response object. Add response is a response object. It is a returning. So after deleting this, which will return the response object, right? So just return that response directly, and the type of the return type is add response. Okay, done. So let me close my country service and save my class. So with this, we have successfully implemented country controller class. So we modified all the methods. There's a get mapping method which will return all the countries, and this is a get country by ID. When I pass this ID, which will fetch the record from the database and it will return to the user, and search by country name, and this is for adding a new record in the table, and this is updating record. Basically it's a put request, and finally delete request. So with this, we have successfully implemented country controller. So which these methods will talk to the country service methods, and country services internally use repository and country bean classes and fetch the data from the database. So if I just look at here, we haven't written even single SQL query. So all the methods are coming from country repository. So by using those methods, we work on the database tables. Okay. So once we have developed everything, so now we will just execute our code and see how HTTP requests are working fine or not. Okay. So let's go back to the Eclipse. Now let's run the main class. So where is the main class? So we don't need to add anything in the main class. So when I start this Spring Boot main class, your Tomcat server, embedded server will automatically start, and then all the HTTP requests will hit to the controller class. All right. So let us start run the main class, run as a Spring Boot app. Okay. So now it is successfully started. So far we haven't seen any issues. Successfully started. So now let us see how HTTP requests are working fine. So for that, I'm just opening my Postman, and this is a Postman tool, client tool, from which we can send a HTTP request. So here I already created my collection, and I created all the HTTP requests, which we already discussed in the yesterday session or the previous video. Okay. So let's first go to the first request, get countries. So if I just go to the Excel sheet also, here get all countries, these are URL get request body is not applicable. So we should get all the data from the table. So if I just look at the table, currently we don't have any data in the table. If I just look at here, all are nulls, right? So let us try to insert some data, and then we'll work with the HTTP request. So let me insert into country values, and ID is 1, and the next column is a capital, I'll say Delhi, and the third column is a country, I say India. Okay, this is my first record. Just execute this command. So one record is inserted. Similarly, I'll try to insert two more records. Okay, so the next record. So the next record will be, let's say, Washington, USA. So country name is USA, and then London, and let's say this is a UK. Okay, let me just insert these two records also. Okay, so last record is not successfully installed. Okay, so I think this ID is same again. So let me just delete once again. So because I have given same ID for all the records, so let me delete them because they are I mentioned as a primary keys. We should not give the duplicates. So I say delete from. So say delete from country. So I'm just deleting already existing records again. So then I'm executing this 1, 2, 3, 3 records. Okay, so now successfully executed. So let me execute this query, select the star from country. So now currently we have 3 records, right? So currently we have 3 records. Now let us see how HTTP works, and along with that HTTP request, we will also verify this data here. Go back. So our Spring class is still running. So let me minimize it. Now go back to the Postman. So the first request, these are HTTP first request. What this get request will do, which will return all the countries which are available in the database. Now let me just send this request. Now we can see here. So these are the results which are exactly coming from the database. So country the first record, second record, and the third record. So currently we have only 3 records, and we can see the status code, everything here. Okay. So this is my first request. Now let us go to the another request. So let's say get country by ID, get country by name. So let's go to the get country by name. So here when I pass a name equal to India, it should return the country object which is having India. So when I send this, it is returning India. Okay, so whichever country you are passing, the country details only should be displayed in the window. And this is a select get country by using name. So let us see one more, get country by ID. So I'm passing 3 here. So when I send this, which will return the third record, which is UK and London. So all get requests are working fine. So now let us try to add a new record. So go to the post request. So here, so we need to say add entry is an endpoint. So the body is, let's just look at here. The body is in the JSON format. So country name and country capital I'm passing. I'm not passing ID. So with ID automatically should generate. And again, if you just go back and see the database, currently we have only 3. Okay. So currently we have only 3. So fourth record we need to add with Italy and Rome. So let us send this request. And yeah, so now the ID is generated for country name is Italy, Rome is a capital. Now go back and execute this query one more time. So now we can see the fourth record. Okay. Now let us try to update this record, fourth record, with the HTTP request. So let me just go to the put request update. So when you try to update, we need to specify the which record you want to update. I'm just passing the 4 here and go to the body section. And what are the details you want to update? For this 4, I don't need to pass this ID because I'm already passing the ID as part of path parameter here. I just pass only country name and country capital. So let's send it. Now you can see here, and it is giving some error. Update is failing. It's not able to update successfully. The reason is, if I just go back to our code, so if I just look at this method in the country controller, update country. So here we are receiving the ID, right, and along with the request body. So update country, but here we are not changing this. We are not changing this. This is endpoint, right? So we are not changing this endpoint. So endpoint we are passing ID also, right? So that we have to specify ID. So update country / ID. So then this will able to get the value from this ID because this is a path variable. Okay, so this is a mistake we have done. So now let us save it. And once again, whenever you do some changes, So we need to start run the server once again. So go to the main program, run as Spring Boot app. Okay, so now it is started once again. Now let us cross check how many records we have in the database as of now when I send this. So currently 4 records already available. Now I want to update my 4th record. So go to my Postman and the same request, 4th record. I want to update with the Japan and Tokyo. If I just go back, currently we have Rome and Italy. So I want to update this with Japan and Tokyo. So I just want to pass the ID as a path parameter, only country name, country capital as a part of body. So let's send this request. So now it is successfully updated. You can see the ID, country name and country capital. Again, if I just go back to the database and execute this query, now the 4th record is updated with the Tokyo and Japan. Okay, this is the update request. Now the last one is delete request. Now go to the delete country, and whichever country ID we are passing here, that country will be automatically deleted. So when I execute send, so we got the country deleted, ID is 4. So this ID record is deleted. Now again go back and get all the requests, get countries, and again we will have only 3 records. And even if you go to the database, select, and finally we will have only 3 records. Okay, so this is how HTTP request we can send, and we can verify they are working fine or not. Okay, so this is the last step. So after creating the service class, we have updated the controller class. The last steps: create controller class, and finally run the main program. Run the main program or run the main application, Spring Boot application. That's it. So this is a step-by-step process which we have to implement, or we have to develop REST APIs along with the microservice. Okay, so if I just look at the structure again, so country controller, so all the controller methods, mapping methods will talk to the country service, and which is again internally use the bean class and repository class and fetch the data from the database and provide the same data to the country controller, and the country controller provide the response to the client. So this is how we need to develop and test the microservice. So still we haven't tested, so we need to do the unit testing of the service. So we are just verify the API requests are working fine or not. Okay, this is API testing. So if I do the testing on the APIs, that's the API testing. But how we can do the microservices testing? So we have a service layer here, right? So we can test this microservice layer alone. So that we will see in the upcoming videos. Okay, so that's all for this video, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see in the next video.